gentlemen, welcome to the Hope Experience podcast. My name is Stephen, director of the Arctic Hope Project, and really, we're here in the Arctic Hope Igloo, and I'm here with none other than my mom, very special lady next to my own children, and my dear wife, of course. My mom, Reepa, Evic-Carleton, welcome to the Arctic Hope Igloo. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Stephen.
You're doing well. Well, that's good. Yeah, this is really something that we've been wanting to do for a while, is to have you on the podcast. We do a lot of, well, I think I follow your lead in a lot of ways, because you've done some amazing things in your life for Inuit, and really I think we're just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about that, talk a little bit about your story, and hopefully inspire some hope in the lives of Inuit living all across Nunavut. So, well, like, is this Arctic Hope Igloo, is this anything like an igloo that you've ever been in before?
No, I haven't been in many igloos before, but I remember a few. When I was a child. Okay,
because like I travel with Bill Prankert quite a bit, and one of the things that I tell people is that you were born in the month of January, share the same birthday with my own daughter, youngest daughter, but I tell people that you were born in an igloo, which I guess is not factually correct.
It's not, because I was born in a hammock, which is more like a sod house. Right.
So born in the month of January. You were born in and around Pangertung, or where was that?
I was born at the time Mom and Dad were living in an outpost camp. Okay. Which was home to other family members, or other families, I should say. So that was our home before we were forcefully moved.
Right. What was life like then?
My early memories are wonderful because I don't remember any stress. I don't remember any traumas, let's say. I don't have those memories when we were in the camp. So a lot of playing outdoors, a lot of using your imagination, because we had no stores whatsoever. So
no TVs.
No TVs, no telephones, no stores, no doctors, no nurses. So it was strictly your people, and then the land and the animals, the ocean. So those are my early memories, playing and using my imagination to create and to play with whatever objects we could use.
Amazing. It's kind of like a lifestyle of camping then.
Very much so.
Yeah, wow. Because I've I mean, you had me here in Ottawa. Well, I guess near Orillia, yeah. But raised here in Ottawa.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm sure that people could see you're not a very old person. You're not, 200 years or whatever. Like, this happened quite recently.
Yeah, it did. It sometimes feels like when I'm sharing my story about that time of my life, it feels like it's somebody else's story, because it's so different than when I was a child.
Amazing. I've only ever been, on the land once or twice in Nunavut, and yeah, it's very big. Like, the land, like, it's as far as you can see, and I guess you would have grown up more so on the coast then, or were you inland a lot, or
on the coast?
On the coast,
right near the ocean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know it's great to remember those times, because when I was ever since I could remember, I felt the security, the love, the structure, just the safety of being cared by not just my parents, by other adults in that time too. In Inuit tradition, I should maybe share a little bit about when I was born. Not that I remember, but these are stories that were passed down. So it was in the winter time, so no electricity. The light from the hammock
Which is what?
Not the kullik. I should say the kullik.
Which
was
is
the
what?
light,
What
which
is
is a
that?
traditional lamp, oil lamp, that the women used to cook their food. The light came from that, the warmth came from that, and also in the winter time to dry clothing over it,
Right.
because the flames are burning all the time. So that's the kind of world I was born into, and we had no nurses or doctors, so there was always a local midwife.
My goodness.
And that lady who helped my mom became my amnaliak in Inuit tradition, and I was her amnaliak too.
No, what is that?
Somebody who helped you to be born, and
so that's just a word for midwife.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, amnaliak. Well, the first person that took you.
Okay.
She said some interesting things to me when I was born. So she would remind me of these things when I was growing up, which helped, I think, shape me into who I am today, because they were very positive words to help to guide me as I grow up to be an adult one day.
Now, you mentioned kudlok before. I know Inuit would know what that is, but I think some people would think that that's a lamp. But how? Like, where would we find these lamps? How were they made? Because they weren't bought at a store when there were no stores.
No, the ones I remember, my mom had actually two big ones in the kammak. They were metal.
Oh wow!
And these metals were from big bales that the whalers had left behind when they used to hunt the bowhead whale way back in the 1800s. I don't know if it happened in the 1700s, but Inuit made these metals into kudliks, and before that, I think they used like soapstone or other things that they could use. So really, they rendered the oil from any animal fat, like seal blubber. I remember Mom would either cook them until the oil started steeping out from
I'll
the
do that
blubber.
with steaks.
Yeah. And also whale blubber, like any animal fat.
Wow.
So she would let it cool down and then squeeze the extra oil, and then she would give me a taste of that texture, very crunchy, and almost tasted like bacon. Now that I think about it, because it's it's all fat.
Yeah.
And it's crispy because the oil has been taken out from it. So and the wig was collected from the land, 2 wigs in my region, 2 wigs mixed together, and there was a season to collect.
Right.
To last for the fall, the winter, and the spring until harvest season again. So
like, oftentimes the question I get from people is, like, how did we figure that out? Because that must have been a long process of trial and error, trying to find a way to live in such a harsh, limited resource type of environment.
I have no idea how they thought of these things, but they worked for many, many years, and I still use mine. I have different kudlas at home, and I use them a lot when I'm doing an opening or a closing at meetings or special events.
So it's very much like a kind of a glimpse into the past.
Very much so.
Yeah,
it does do something to me because it really grounds me.
Some of your earliest memories.
Yeah, and it really puts me in a good headspace, like really peaceful.
Wow, that's amazing. So, like, like that I don't want to give people your age, but that wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago.
So in a very short period of time, we've gone from living literally off the land, where there's not even trees to give us, regular fuel for fires. We had to go hunting. We've gone from living extremely nomadic to now living in homes, and you're wearing a scarf, and I'm wearing like a jacket with a hat. Like, this that's an extremely fast change in a culture's way of life, in a people's way of life. Can you talk to our people about how it is that happened so quickly?
When I used to work at the healing center, the Mamisabik Healing Center, we had one of our components was teaching our people Inuit history in a therapeutic way.
Right.
It had to be in a therapeutic way because there's been so many changes that have happened to us, from being very independent and living how you want to live really, but always thinking about survival because you had to survive.
Right.
And living a good life, treating people right, respecting elders, sharing any food or anything that you may think other people needed. So a lot of sharing. It was a good way of life. And so from that, a peaceful surrounding, a very much in unity with nature and your people. Not that it wasn't easy, because it was hard. It was a hard way of living because you're talking about weather, you're talking about animals that may become scarce more so than other times. So a lot of it was survival. But a lot
at its most basic form.
Yes, and a lot of good times too, because you're always with your people. You're always playing, or you're hunting together.
Right.
You're cleaning skins together. There's a lot of that communityness in that. A lot of dependence on one another too, to one day being removed from that into something very different, even though it was in the same north, but the lifestyle changed very drastically.
Right.
Inuit had like the power, control, and independence before. When they were forcefully moved.
And who forcefully moved?
The government.
The
government did. Without the input of the Inuit people, all these policies were being formed here in Ottawa without any Inuit input.
Amazing.
So it really impacted our way of life in many, many levels. And I was just going to mention that we didn't go to school, but we learned every day by watching mom or your dad. Everything you learned was from watching and being taught.
Right.
So a lot of that changed. Well, I was just going to say, my great grandmother, who would be your great great grandmother, was very skilled and gifted in midwifery. And many Inuit were also...
And she didn't go to college, she didn't go to university for that?
No,
She just figured it out.
She knew what to do.
Yeah.
Because having babies isn't always easy at times, and being pregnant, sometimes a baby could be a breech, or there would be other conditions. But my great grandmother knew what to do, to a point where a doctor, who was a doctor in my community because it was being formed, they built a hospital there to help people that were having real health problems. A lot of epidemics started to happen after contact with the white man.
We didn't have any immune system for that.
We didn't have any of that because we were not used to these different viruses or diseases. So a hospital was built in my community, and the building's still there. But the doctor heard about my great-grandmother, who was skilled in midwifery, and went to her camp with an interpreter.
How far away was that from the hospital?
By dog team, it would be more than maybe a day's travel.
Wow.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
I've traveled it once in my memory by dog team, and we had to overnight. Maybe the weather was a
Yeah, right.
factor.
But there was no skidoos then. It was all dog team.
It was dog teams.
My goodness.
Peaceful way to travel. I've fallen off the Kamutik few times, but was able to run and catch up.
So there's no seatbelts on these Kamutiks.
No, you had to sit very still. But it's a nice way to travel. There's no sounds except the footprints of the dogs and the sled, the sound from the sled against the snow or ice. So the doctor went to see her. He must have been just curious about this lady. And one of the questions was, how do you prepare yourself when you're about to examine a female? Because that's,
I know, but what was the answer?
Her simple answer was, I fold up my sleeves up to
elbow.
Up to elbow, and then I take my fingers and put them against my teeth and chip really, really down to the skin so I don't scratch.
So she would bite her own nails.
Yeah, and then she would do her examination.
There was no rubbing alcohol, iodine, disinfecting.
I don't know if she used any disinfectant ingredient, but that was her simple answer.
But that must have been the way that human beings did delivery for thousands of years.
Yeah.
That type of
treatment or system.
My goodness.
So she was skilled in that.
And that was your great-great-grandmother?
Yeah, that was Asivak.
Was that being like 1800s then, or?
This was in probably early 1900s.
Wow.
When the hospital was being built.
Right. But she would have been born in the 1800s. And,
oh yeah. She was older back in that time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm very honored that she's also the lady that became a Christian long time ago.
Wow.
She chose to follow God.
Right.
And let go of her old ways. And she's seen visions before that time.
My goodness.
Where a face would appear to her in the middle of nowhere and would talk to her about things are going to change drastically for your people. So...
Do you believe that was God or...
Hard to say because that spirit would have been helping her up until she let go. Yeah. Not in evil ways or anything like that, but in good ways to help other people. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, maybe one way you could look at it is it's the fruit of what was going on. If bad things were going on, then maybe, you could stand to say maybe it wasn't a good spirit. But if good things were happening, then maybe that's a different thing.
Yeah, so... But she was a very gifted, skilled lady, and I'm grateful that she had converted, because I'm a seed from that. Yeah. And you are. It goes on. Yeah.
I want to ask you this. You co-founded Canada's only Inuit-specific trauma and addictions treatment center. And I remember when I was young, all of that was kind of in the framework, a center being established here in Ottawa where Inuit from Nunavut could come down and receive counseling and just some I guess just have their needs met here. What inspired you to do such a thing?
I've just spoken about my wonderful childhood, a little bit of that. There's many parts to it, but that's where I came from that environment of, we were very sheltered as children. We never listened to any serious adult discussions. I remember being asked to go and play outside when adults were having a meeting about something, but we didn't know what it was. Right. But they had to talk about it. So from that environment to a place where we were now going to school. We were now not learning from our parents on how to become a mother one day, a wife one day. We were learning something very different from what we would have learned if we had stayed with that environment. So I never experimented with alcohol or drugs either because it wasn't around.
Sure.
We didn't have it.
Yep. And this is like the 1960s and 70s, hey? There wasn't...
The 1950s, maybe alcohol was coming in through the whalers or different ways through the ship or airplanes. But I wasn't around it.
Right.
So I have never experienced violence either because it didn't happen.
Just wasn't our way of life.
It would have been something that the leaders in the camp would correct quickly.
Right.
Because they had leaders.
And how many people are we talking about here in the camp?
Maybe like less than 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, small camps.
Yeah.
Some were bigger, some were smaller, but not very big.
Wow.
Yeah. So the school was a big factor. The Hudson's Bay Company, RCMP, and then the TV came along, telephones. Sure. Like all of these were very.
Are we talking like in a period of like 10 years that all this came in, or? Like from when, like you remember being...
We were relocated when I was about 6 years old.
Okay.
So that was in the 60s. So we didn't have a home right away. I remember going into a canvas tent because the houses were still being built. And it must have been fall time because I felt cold. And the food that we were eating wasn't the same.
Really?
Yeah, so...
It wasn't like your traditional...
It wasn't that until the men started hunting again.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a period there where we were eating
Southern
foreign foods to us. No stores at the time in these camps, so... No junk food either, so the diet was very healthy.
Wow.
And we were always moving. We didn't stay in that camp. We had summer camp, we had autumn camp. Like, we were always moving depending on the season and where the hunting was good for caribou, fish, seal, all of these. So, and I remember walking on the land, just tundra, with my father when he was caribou hunting. Just very quiet, very peaceful.
Did he have a rifle at this point? Or
yeah,
was it?
He had a rifle.
Okay.
I wasn't a hunter at all because he did tell me to shoot a caribou. And I closed my eyes because I didn't want to kill this beautiful animal in front of me. But he said, you have to. It's for food.
Yeah, we don't live if...
Yeah, and it's for clothing. It's the skins for clothing. Yeah. You use everything of an animal. So I closed my eyes, and I think that was the first time I've ever shot
a gun.
Was
that the first and last time?
Yes. So I had my eyes closed and I shot it on the leg. So my father had to shoot it again.
Oh, no.
So I think that was a bad experience for me because I never wanted to do that again.
How old were you at this point?
I was in my teens.
Okay.
Yeah. So lots of good memories like that. Yeah. So I got kind of sidetracked here. What was the question?
The question was like, what inspired you to start? This treatment center.
Yeah. So life goes on, and I started going to school. I was a content teenager. I really was. I really had, planned to finish school and do something. Mm-hmm. I think because of what my Annale always told me, that I would help people. Mm-hmm. And other people have said that before. So I'm going along, going to school, and enjoying life, just how we're
Yeah.
meant to be,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, spiritually. And a very dramatic thing happened to me when I was 15. So that's when my trouble started
Right.
happening within me,
Right.
where I got raped at that age, and the guy who raped me wouldn't let me go. I felt so very stuck, and there
Wow.
was really no help at the time, and I was really afraid even to tell
Yep.
my mom
Yep.
because of the shame. Not that I should have been, but these kinds of things does that to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we did get married because I had a child when I was in I was only 17
My
when I had
goodness.
my oldest daughter. And I finished elementary school, but I didn't go into high school because I was already taking
Sure.
on responsibility. And I started working young, and
Where were you working?
at the weaving shop. That was my
Oh, wow.
first ever job
Yep.
as a weaver. And then he had already experimented drugs and alcohol, and
He was older than you?
he was not that many
Okay.
years. So our marriage life began roughly,
Sure.
and lots of hurtful things happened, and we had two more children. We had three altogether, but he became very violent and abusive and controlling and very obsessed.
Mm-hmm. Quite
And I
awful.
always worked.
Yeah.
He couldn't really hold jobs, so I've always worked to support my family. I realized maybe in late 80s that something was happening to me.
Right.
I
Right.
felt trapped.
Right.
I started to feel hopeless and helpless. And I would sometimes want to disappear, like to get out of
Mm-hmm.
the misery I was in.
Yep.
And I would have to run for safety to my mom and dad's with little children because of what was happening at home. So lots of trauma. And we had not learned about
Mm-hmm.
post-traumatic stress disorder. It was not even a word back
No.
in my time.
Yep.
So into the 90s, I was really traumatized.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I had symptoms that I wasn't used, like I was living a lifestyle that I never knew, like, well,
Mentally, yeah.
mentally
Yeah.
and psychologically, things were
Processing.
processing
yeah.
whatever was going on with me, but I had been
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. So that one day I said to Mika, I don't want to hear you preach to me. I just want you to listen to me. And she did that.
My goodness. What a moment, hey?
She did that to me, and it made a big difference because I found God again
Wow.
on my
Yep.
on my own doing,
Yep.
and I've never let go. So when I came south, I had this going on within me. I found a church, a spirit-filled church in Beaverton, Ontario, and I
Is that right?
started going there, a Pentecostal church.
Now, Beaverton, for all of you watching and listening, is it's less than like 1,000 people. It's a small little town. That's where my father came from, and I was born just an hour north of that or so. So you found a spirit-filled church in Beaverton.
I did, and it saved me. It
Wow.
helped me so much. So I started growing more spiritually, and then we moved to Ottawa because I was offered a job, and I also started attending a spirit-filled church, and during that renewal that was happening in the early 90s, I got so what's the word?
Swept up in it, or
I
rejuvenated.
got so much healing done,
Wow.
inner healing done. because when you go forward to a prayer, like when there's a ministry,
Yeah.
you do really get a lot.
Right.
And it's obeying, it's obeying what the Lord's telling you, using His people. And so I got a lot of that, a lot of healing from that, restoration.
Sure.
Healing, maybe deliverance from things that I couldn't, I couldn't help myself with. One of them being panic attacks. So I was set free from that. I can't tell you how many years ago. Back in 93, I left, me and my first husband separated in the early 80s. So I raised my three children single, but he always found a way to kind of bother us.
Right.
So throughout a lot of those years, even when I was living in the South, he found ways to agitate me or cause problems. And just so I made a vow, because I was working at a Tungasvingat Inuit.
It's an Inuit organization.
It's an Inuit organization here. And also we started the healing center. What year was that? Early 2000.
Yeah. I mean, I was
Beginning
just
of
a young
early
boy at that
2000,
point.
yeah. So leading up to that, in 1993, I was with my coworker, and I was sharing with her during our break a very traumatic or very bad nightmare I had of my ex-husband, and I would have those periodically, and it would impact me.
Do you think that was PTSD, or were kind of the residual?
It was a symptom of PTSD.
Sure.
So I'm telling her, and she said, "You need to forgive him." I got so upset with her.
Wow.
I said, "No, I'm not going to forgive him voluntarily. He maybe I can do it if he asks me." So my answer was no.
Yeah.
Then she said to me, it's for your own good. It's not for him, it's for you.
Yeah.
It's for your freedom." And I got a little glimpse of the truth, and I tried.
Wow.
All I did was try. And ever since that day, all my terrible dreams stopped.
Wow.
To this day, I've never had them again.
You're telling me, and this is something that I've also experienced,
Yeah.
is that forgiveness is something that really helps us.
It does. It did to me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many other people have experienced it.
My life was forever changed.
Yeah, so there's real power there.
Yeah.
Because our God tells us to forgive those that do us harm. So when we obey Him, when we take that step, He's right there. He's right there to help us.
Yeah.
So something was cut from my life, and one of them was fear. The other one was fear.
Wow.
Even though I've been a Christian a long time, I had this with me because I hadn't dealt with them. So isn't that good? I'm so grateful that there's a way that we can get out of these things that we can't even explain sometimes, because they're in here.
Yeah. Like, one thing I kind of hear you saying is that because of the healing that you found through or from something so awful when you were a young teenager, and I to anyone watching or listening, I knew all this beforehand. We're actually quite good friends.
We are.
Yeah, I knew all of what you were talking about from when you were a teenager, but what I think many of our viewers and listeners can understand here is that it is possible to take something that awful in our past and not only to come through it, you know, to find the light at the end of the tunnel, or healing, or some form of resolve from all of that. It's possible for that, but it's also possible to take those terrible experiences and inspire hope, inspire the idea in other people's minds that it's possible for them too. And I think that's one of the things that you were, maybe that inspired you to start the Inuit Trauma and Addictions Treatment Center. Because very much, like, I worked there for a year.
Yeah.
4 cycles, and there might have been close to 100 clients that came through, smaller groups at first, or larger groups, and then it's a 2-month intensive course, so
Yeah.
a lot would kind of leave, or just it was too difficult to do some of that inner healing. But it was very intensive, and trauma first was the idea, not the addictions, not the symptoms of things that, you know, are the byproduct of some awful past. You know, it's the trauma first was the focus.
Yeah, I think we needed to have that focus because of what's happened to us people. We not only experienced a forced relocation where families were picked up one day and taken to different or settlements that were being formed. So you left everything behind, like your everything. I remember as a young mother, my mom and dad always took us back to that place where I was born. And I remember digging the soil, looking for anything I could find.
Wow.
These old campsites, whether it was a piece of glass, a button, or beads, or anything I would pick. I remember this adult coming and sitting beside me. She's a first cousin, but my mom's age, maybe a little bit younger than my mom. I had my daughter, my youngest daughter was an infant. I was carrying her in my amauti. So she came over, sat beside me, and out of nowhere, I asked her, how was it when you were moved? I've never asked that question to anyone. I was just too young to remember all of that. She started to cry and cry.
Wow.
And cry.
This is a woman who'd only known, like, for all of her life, years and years and years and years
Of living that peaceful way of life, to one day being scooped up and taken away.
Wow.
By the forced relocation. Then she started to share with me, we could not take anything. None of our personal possessions, not that they had many, because Inuit lived like with not many personal material possessions. They had their needs met, and that was fine, but they had special things too that they would collect over the years.
Yeah, just little things.
She could not take anything. By the time somebody went back to that camp, everything was demolished. Everything, the home and everything inside it.
Like flattened, do you mean? Or?
Yeah, demolished completely.
Wow.
So from then on, that was 40 years ago, I learned my people have a lot of loss and grief.
Sure.
Because of these things that have happened to us.
The
forced relocation, the residential schools that happened. My oldest brother was picked up before I was born to go to school.
Wow.
To go, and other kids, how sad was that for our mom and dad? And boys were like, they would become providers, hunters, husbands, parents. One day, that's how they groom the young boys, and they would be their helpers.
Right.
So to have them taken away must have been a very sad day.
No kidding.
And the bonding that would happen to them was broken, and things were never back to that again for many people. So I really honor the survivors because they had to.
How do you process that?
How do you process that?
Yeah.
and then their relationships with their families, the being Inuk,
Mm-hmm.
to many of us was like shameful.
Sure.
Shameful to eat your food, shameful to speak your language. So we started carrying these things that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
were not meant to be carried. And then the dog team slaughters did actually happen. I know men in my community that their dog teams, their only way of life wasn't there anymore because a lot of dogs were slaughtered.
Now, I think to anyone listening or watching this,
Yeah.
when you say slaughtered, I mean, that
They
sounds...
were killed, like...
But, like, so I think people have a hard time even processing that.
Yeah, I know, but...
Because, like, it doesn't sound like something that Canadian government would do, but it happened.
It happened. There's even documentaries that talk about the men talking about their experiences. They lost their friend. They lost their protector and guide because dogs knew what to do,
Sure.
where to go, and they protected them from fierce animals like polar bear or wolves, and they helped them carry food. When you're out on the land walking, getting your caribou, back in those days you had no skidoos.
Right.
So you traveled foot and you brought a dog who would help you carry some of the meat. That's just how things worked.
And the whole idea there was so that we would stay in the communities that we were relocated to.
That's one story
One
I
aspect
have heard. Yeah, one aspect. So there's
Wow.
horrible stories out there that we haven't heard of all yet. It would be great for people to really start sharing their stories of these things, because when I hear of these stories, my puzzle pieces are like starting to
come
fade
together.
and I begin to understand why things are the way they are or have been.
And things are pretty scary sometimes in the Arctic, with suicide rates being what they are, hopelessness really quite tangible in a lot of
and a
homes,
lot of resources are scarce.
Yeah.
Like, there's not many resources for the issues that we're dealing with. We need more resources, like even treatment centers, family programs. Like, we need more workers to help people deal with these things, because
people need to find healing here.
People need to find healing here. We didn't really need them years ago, but things have changed so much that we need resources.
And I think one of the things that really makes the problems a lot worse, like the inner problems, I mean, inner traumas, past experiences that were terrible in many people's lives. What makes those worse is the dependency on drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, it makes things more complicated because there are a lot of people use that to cover, not remember or not feel the awful feeling that they're feeling. So
even temporarily.
Even temporarily. So at the healing center that we ran, the focus was on the trauma, because we used very standardized assessment tool used across the country to assess our clients, and most people, including myself, have been severely traumatized.
And those are Canadian standards. Those are things that any psychiatric facility would have these types.
Good tools, very good tools.
Ways of looking at people's trauma, what they're dealing with.
There's a lot to this assessment tool, because it's lengthy, but it's good. And it makes you feel like somebody's caring for you, right? Because we're looking at everything and trying to address what they're coming with. So I'm telling you this because I was there before. I felt those feelings. I felt the helplessness, the hopelessness. When the hope is gone, what do you what do you look forward to?
Sure, sure.
I wasn't suicidal, but
You know what hopelessness feels like.
I know how it feels.
Yeah.
I know how it feels to be almost like you're at the edge of.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did have a dream once in the 80s where I saw a rope hanging from a door.
Holy smokes.
And I woke up and I realized I'm in trouble.
Sure.
If I continue with
Thank you for realizing that.
what I'm like, where I am,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but spiritually. And you know what I did? I went to an elder and I asked her to pray for me. You know, honesty is very good. It's a very good thing to become vulnerable and honest about what you're going through. Because God wants us to be honest. He can take all of what we're carrying and restore it and bring it back to well-being, bring it back to health.
So let me ask you this. There might be people who are watching and listening right now who can relate to, who understand what trauma feels like, might have even gone through the same things that you've gone through and haven't found the same healing that you've found. What would you say to them looking at that camera?
I would say to whoever is feeling the way I used to feel that there's a way out. There's people who care enough to hear your story. There's places that you can go to. There's elders. There's even nature that have helped me a lot. You may have had dreams that can really help you. And then my biggest help has been my God, turning to God with the mess that I was in. And over time, we love to recover quickly, but sometimes it doesn't work that way, so it's a process. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on other people that you're helping. Don't give up because there's always a way out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think we would both agree that when you allow God into these areas in your life, what a difference that makes. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here right now that it is possible to come through these things.
And that hope can be restored.
Yeah.
You can get your hope back.
Yeah.
I'm very motivated by and passionate about this kind of work because it works. It works.
Thank God there's a solution.
And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
You don't need to have many people agreeing with you or listening to you. I found one.
Yeah.
In my community. I still have her because she's still around. You can find people who can help you really recover because we do get sick, not just physically, but also emotionally, psychologically because of what's happened to us.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is not a little thing.
Not an easy thing.
Not an easy thing to do at all. You heard me say I didn't want to, but when my friend said it's for me, that's when I took that step to forgive because I needed help. I wasn't who I was meant to be. So I took that, I listened, and I'm so grateful I did that. It may take time. It took lots of time for me. Long time to get to that, but it's done.
It's worth it.
It's worth it.
Yep.
And you know, I have begun to understand why my ex-husband was the way he was, why he was the way he was. And it's also because of traumas that happened to him.
He'd gone through something.
He's gone through something a lot earlier than I have. And
you know, it's a cliched saying, but I think there's so much truth to it, is that hurt people hurt people.
yeah.
You know, and the person that had hurt me when I was a young teenager himself was abused when he was a young boy. You know, so as unfortunate as that cliched statement is, it is true. But also, I think, now with what you're doing and with what we're doing, you know, through Arctic Hope Project, we're trying to inspire hope and change in so many
and it's
people.
Very possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And look, we've seen it happen in Pangertung and in Cape Dorset, young people that have come through healing there.
Look what has happened through the healing center.
Yeah. How many
people,
like what, 2,000 or 3,000, wasn't it?
Over 2,000 clients came through.
Over 17 years was it going on, or how long was it?
Early 2000 to 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's about to start again. I'm very, very grateful that this center is about to start again, because it's very much needed. Yeah. And it's a second chance to doing life again. Yeah. You know.
Well, folks, look, it's this has been a real treat for me. I know we've tried to make this happen for the last little while, but yeah, there is hope for your life. There is a God who cares. There are people who care for you. And as long as you stay on your feet, there is the chance for hope in your life. And in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8, it's kind of the one Bible verse that we hold on to so dearly, is that God rekindles burnt-out lives with fresh hope. And you're looking at two people right now who experienced that rekindling of our burnt-out lives with God's fresh hope.
Amen.
So, love you guys. Listen, don't give up. Stay in the fight, and we'll see you next month.